Thank you so much today for joining me, R. Scott Russell, Director of Client Success here at CA Short, on a fantastic webinar series. This is going to be a casual conversation today about engaging in healthcare. And with me today, I have two wonderful friends and longtime partners in Recognition Professionals International. Both are former board members, as I am a current board member, and I'm very glad to have them. My first guest today is Susie Lyons, Workforce Engagement Consultant for Vanderbilt University Medical Center. With over 30 years in the people business, Susie is currently a consultant on workforce engagement at Vanderbilt. Her responsibilities include onboarding new employees, monitoring engagement activities, and training leadership tactics such as rounding and recognition. She holds a CRP and is a previous board member of Recognition Professionals International. I think you're a former board member for us. Susie supports and encourages that organization's best practices. My second guest today is Melissa Minkow, Patient Experience Leader at TVR Communications. Throughout Melissa's career, she has focused on increasing patient satisfaction, clinical process improvements, and hospital HCA HPS with positions at New York Presbyterian Hospital and Aaron Solutions. She also has a CRP and served on the board of Recognition Professionals International for 5 years. Mrs. Minkow is currently the Patient Experience Leader at TVR Communications, where she has spent many years helping clients chart a clear path to positive clinical service and financial outcomes through staff training and best practice implementation. Thank you both for being here with me today, ladies.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
I'm very glad to have you with me today, my friends. And today, like I said, it's a casual conversation with a couple of experts in the healthcare field. And we're going to talk a little bit about employee engagement, employee recognition, and sort of how that ties in to the healthcare environment and patient satisfaction. So what I really wanted to start with, if I could, ladies, is just talk to you a little bit about your view on the general state of employee engagement in healthcare. And if you could talk a little bit about your work life and maybe discuss some of the challenges that you see in your environment. And why don't we jump in? Susie, if you could start us out, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think that the engagement concept and what we're looking at Vanderbilt is probably similar to what we see across the country as far as overall engagement and the numbers, and that we certainly have a portion of our population that's highly engaged and those that are not engaged, and some that are obviously actively disengaged too. I think one of the largest challenges that we have and the concerns we have is that middle number, that group that is completely indifferent. And those are the group that we are concerned about, their retention and how they may go to actively disengaged side real easily, and how easily they're influenced by not the right model of behavior that we want them to behave, and going to the less productive side of this equation than instead of moving to the more engaged. So that's one of the challenges that we face regularly and try to address those people in that group specifically.
Now, Melissa, would you agree with that, or do you have a different take on that?
I would agree, and you know, I'm privileged to have the opportunity to work with a lot of health systems, right? I travel fairly extensively, so I sort of get to see, you know, a little bit of this in many places, and I think, you know, part of it is the word employee engagement itself. So what does that really mean? I think it can mean different things to different people. You know, when I think about employee engagement, I think about, you know, someone that has an emotional connection, right? They have a willful, purposeful connection and commitment to something, right? They're empowered sort of from the inside, not from outside forces, and that sort of connection makes them or leads them to feel connected to an organization's goals, right, their mission, vision, values, et cetera. And I think in healthcare, we sort of take that to another level. You know, it's sure it's about numbers and scores and you know, making goals, but it's also about saving lives and really changing the course for people and their loved ones. So I think when we look at employee engagement in healthcare, I think it means something a little bit more, right? Because there's a bigger emphasis on something greater. Now, when I think about that, then there's also challenges that come along with that, right? Healthcare is in the news a lot these days, right? Federal government's putting hundreds of millions of dollars, and hospitals are fighting for reimbursements and improving quality metrics, and all of those things. They make up a fairly stressful environment. Healthcare is a popular field today, but it certainly isn't an easy field to work in. Dollars are being cut all the time. Health systems and hospitals are consolidating, and part of what happens when those things take place is you're also consolidating people. Cultures, groups of folks that haven't worked together in the past are now all of a sudden part of the same organization, and it just creates a lot of uncertainty. And that uncertainty isn't just for patients, it's also for the staff and the folks that care for them. So I think it certainly is a timely topic.
That's good information. What do both of you think about? You've been around. You've both been in this industry for a good while. Do you see healthcare engagement increasing? Do you see it? Do you feel like it's in a stagnant mode? I mean, where do you think it truly is today? Maybe let's say compared to 5 or 10 years ago, or I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on that.
I believe we see small adjustments. I don't think that from our perspective at Vanderbilt Medical Center anyway, that we have seen any large jumps. We see large jumps in different departments depending on how the manager's leading the areas. But as far as overall engagement, it's a really hard number to move. It's not something that you can, matter of fact, our focus doesn't need to be on our engagement score. It needs to be on engaging employees. What do we do to try to turn that around instead of looking at what this number is? But some of the research that I've seen across the industry, not just healthcare, is that some of these numbers are not moving as wildly as we would actually like them to move.
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think this is not a find the magic bullet and fix it tomorrow problem. I think healthcare in many parts of the universe is probably always behind some of its sister industries, and I think that's accurate here too, where employee engagement, recognition, all of those things were not always necessarily number one on the list. It's also more than just about clinicians, right? We put a lot of focus on nursing and physicians and clinical and ancillary support, but there's also other groups of folks that keep hospitals and healthcare facilities running. And so, to Susie's point, it's really hard to find a sweet spot in all of those areas to consistently move scores forward. I see progress. I don't think we're there yet, but I do see movement in the right direction. But it's a commitment. It's a roll up your sleeves, grind every day commitment. It's nothing that happens overnight.
Right.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think one of the things that we see too is that in many organizations, we get our numbers, we get our scores after we've done our surveys. We look at them, we focus on them, we come up with these plans, and that's the top priority, and that's it for a time period. And then the next priority happens, and then sometimes these initiatives that we initially put in place don't always become the ones that we're focused on today. So to continue to work on engagement, it has to be a 12-month process, through the year, day-to-day process. It's not something that we can focus on just at the time that we get our results.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Do you think that the constant changes in structure and clinical turnover, those kinds of things, cause a lot of difficulty in gaining engagement because it's hard to have that unity?
Well, I think what you're looking for in engagement is also this sense of relationship building and the respect that comes from that. And when you do have an organization or a unit that has a lot of turnover, sometimes that's harder to create. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right that kind of change doesn't do anything to help facilitate this. That it does create a little bit of a challenge, and that's a challenge that we have in healthcare with the turnover that we have, which also we know is a result of engagement as well in many cases. So it all feeds off of each other.
Good, well said.
I also think, yeah, and I think also, related to that, leadership development, not so much at the senior leader level in healthcare, but at that sort of unit and department level, I think is key. And it's something that, it might sound counterintuitive, but it's something that I think in healthcare is a more recent focus. Somebody can be an incredible clinician, a great nurse, a great physician. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have tools, that they are innately a great leader or a great manager. It doesn't mean that they can't get there, right, because they have already demonstrated some mastery of their skill, of their position. But there has to be some sort of human capital investment in developing that sort of middle level of leaders to be able to help empower and engage those teams of people that are on the units in the front lines every day. And I think that's something that, partly because of turnover, partly because of sort of competing, clinical quality obligations is something maybe we haven't quite mastered yet.
Good feedback.
Melissa, I've seen that. I've seen a statistic on that, and I can't remember right at the top of my head, but it's around 60% of people who are supervised by a highly engaged manager tend to be highly engaged as well of that unit. So to what Melissa's saying too, that's also where we are focusing a lot of attention on that middle level manager, training them, helping them to understand all the aspects of being a great leader, how to create these relationships, how to instill respect and trust into the area so that it helps to create this engagement that we're looking for.
All right, that's good. That's great information and an interesting topic, and it really is going to lead us to our next topic a little bit. And what I want to talk a little bit about now, ladies, is does employee engagement truly have an effect on patient satisfaction? How do those two sort of coexist or feed off of one another?
Melissa, you and I could probably talk about this all day long, but I'll let you go ahead first.
All day long. Yeah, sure. So I have a few thoughts, and I don't want to ramble on, but I think you can't have one without the other. I really think you can't. The correlation is there. It brings challenges, certainly. But if you go back I think we're about maybe a little more than 10 years now from when we started with HCAPs in the hospitals with the required patient satisfaction domains that are consistent across the country that sort of impact reimbursement. And there's been such a focus on patient-centric sort of service excellence, perception of care, score-related initiatives that I think a lot of folks have forgotten that to make all of those wheels turn, behavior and culture change is the only way to get there. And when we think about behavior and culture change, staff has to not feel left out or left behind, right? So they're tasked with this process of improvement, and then sometimes they feel like an afterthought. Somebody can be happy at work, but maybe they're not productive, right? Somebody could be satisfied, and they come to work every day and they collect their paycheck, but maybe they leave when another hospital offers them, a little bit more of a flexible schedule or something that means a bit to them. So I think when employees are engaged, they care, and when they care, you impact patient satisfaction.
Absolutely, and there are study after study after study now that will show this a really strong positive relationship between an engagement score of an area and then the patient satisfaction or patient safety scores that happen along with that. And I go back to this idea of trust and relationships. When we have an employee who is highly engaged, they're more likely to speak up in a situation that could be harmful to a patient. They're taking more ownership of the situation. They're more likely to give feedback, communicate with others about things that could result in a negative event of some sort. So that's what we're trying to do too. That's where we see this result. That's how we impact our bottom line too. And I'm not talking about just financially, but as we look at other quality and safety goals that we have and patient satisfaction goals, all of these goals can be based off of the quality relationship we have, this trust that shows itself with employee engagement.
Right.
Yeah, see, I don't remember the exact numbers. Scott, you guys might be able to look this up. Gallup did a study, right? They did a study not long ago, a couple of hundred hospitals, where they were actually able to find that nursing engagement was the #1 predictor of variability and mortality. So if you think about that, right, nursing engagement as it relates to, like Susie said, whether somebody lives or dies, errors in care, these are critical, difficult, stressful decisions that clinicians make every single day. And to know that nursing engagement can be the #1 predictor of that, I mean, that might not be a patient satisfaction score exactly, but it trickles down, right? So if nursing engagement scores impact mortality, they impact how patients are cared for. Some of the HCAHPS domains, they focus specifically on nursing and physician communication, right? How well a nurse or physician communicates with you, the perception of how often that communication is happening. The surveys ask specifically, sometimes, always, usually, never, and you only really get credit for always. So if you have a staff member, and again, we say nursing because it sort of is almost like an automated response, but I'm speaking to the whole population of folks that work in healthcare, right? We're talking about a housekeeper, somebody who delivers your dinner, somebody who, parks your car at the valet when you come in. If patients and their loved ones don't feel like, they're being attended to, and the nursing and all of these other staff don't feel like they're valued, they're not recognized, and they don't matter, then, that's a trickle-down effect. How can you be your best when you don't feel your best? And I think, it seems obvious, but it's a difficult thing to make sure that things happen the same way consistently all the time, right? That's tough.
Right. And then let me say this too. We all know, engagement and satisfaction aren't the same thing. Obviously, a patient can get satisfied because they get discharged, right? They're out. But they may not actively be engaged in taking greater care of their own health. Do you feel that that patients who are treated by and surrounded by engaged healthcare workers take a more active role in their own well-being and listen and do the things they're supposed to do more? Do you see that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, we see that. There's no question about that. The healthcare provider who's going to go into the room and be able to communicate openly about what's happening, be transparent about the type of care that this patient's receiving, what they need to know when they leave. We see even less readmissions for these kinds of things too when we have the actively engaged, highly engaged employee working with this kind of person, the patient. So these another reason this is so important for healthcare, the healthcare industry in doing that. And it's again part of this the commitment to the whole organization. Again, it's not we talk about nurses because for most of us that's a large part of our population, but Melissa's absolutely right. It's the entire organization that impacts this.
How can a nurse excel at communicating with her patient, right? Which is how, we want a patient and their loved ones to be engaged in their care. They want to learn about what it takes to get home and to take care of themselves so they don't wind up back in the hospital, which, by the way, then also costs the hospital extra money. They get dinged for that. How can a nurse or a clinician, a clinical professional, excel at doing that when, they themselves don't feel like that is something that comes to them? So it really is a very closely connected chain. If the nurses or if a person isn't engaged, they don't come into the room and feel like they should wash their hands, then that patient come in and maybe they're not engaged because they had a bad day or they feel like their manager doesn't care about them and they're not paying attention. They make a mistake. They give the patient the wrong medication. That patient dies, right? So I think even more so in healthcare than anywhere else, the link between sort of patient engagement or customer engagement and the folks that are interacting with them, it's vital. It really is.
Yeah,
we got humans taking care. I'm sorry, we got humans taking care of humans. So humans on both sides of this equation have to be taken care of.
Right. That's well said. I can share with you, with both of you, that in my own experience, I'm very fortunate. I have no matter where I am in the country, my doctor is actually back in Nashville, and I won't let her go because she is the most engaging physician I've ever had the pleasure of actually being a patient of. And so I actually do listen to what she has to say, even when she told me I needed to do hot yoga to de-stress, and I told her that I don't like the heat. But I listen because she's, I guess in the old days they would call it bedside manner, but today we call it engagement, and she is interested in me as a person and wants to hear about the things I'm doing and wants to hear what's good and what she can help with. And I have found that level of communication is really what drives me to want to hold on to her as my doctor. I don't want to let go because no matter where I'm at, I drive back home if I have to, just because I want to be sure to have that relationship. And I haven't experienced it that often in the healthcare field. So when you see it, I really feel like, I think I'm a good example of what you've just talked about, the fact that I don't spend a lot of time in a hospital, thank goodness, and that I don't have a lot of issues because I treat and listen to my doctor and to do the things she's telling me to do, and I respond to that because we have a really good engaging communication factor. So I fully believe in what you both just shared. I think you're right on to that. And so let's talk a little bit. We've all three been board members of Recognition Professionals International. That is where we all met at different times in our career in different cities and places. So tell me just a little bit. What I'd like to know, with you both in the field you're in and what you've done in your past, what do you see as really good trends in recognition and how you're utilizing recognition in the healthcare environment? Maybe there's something new today that you're doing different than you did several years ago, or maybe there's just some really great best practices. But if you could just share a few things you would recommend to your peers around the country.
I tell you what, we actually have taken a step backwards in some ways in our recognition strategy, and going back and really focusing on the thank you and what is it? What does thank you really mean? And taking time to not just say thank you, but to mean it, and to be able to express why it's important to someone. What is it that I saw you do, and why does it matter? And letting the person know that they matter, and connecting it back to something that is special to them. Just one simple example is my boss wrote me a thank you note. It's one of those notes that you hold on to, and she said, after a lot of other things, but the very end thing she said to me was, Susie, thank you for making VUMC, for all you do to make Vanderbilt Medical Center a great place to work. And she connected with me on a way that she knows me enough personally to know that she couldn't have said anything that was more meaningful to me. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to make sure our managers go back, know who your people are, know what's important to them, and link to those things that are important as you recognize them and you see them do their work. So we're going way back, pushing the thank you notes, pushing the opportunity to express feelings of gratitude.
Well, I think, and Susie, I think you really hit on it. When I think about recognition, I actually think a little bit of it the way I think about patient experience, which is where most of my background is, which, not tons have changed in the last years. We just have some better tools and some more awareness around how to get things done. When I think about, the thank you that Susie, you just talked about, to me, thank you can't be an empty promise, right? Thank you it's got to be filled with something. It's got to You can't just walk up to someone and say, hey, thank you, and walk away and think that that's going to actually make a difference, you know. But then I sort of go back to my CRP courses and my RPI days, and I think about the recognition model, right? You know, it's about assessment, and it's about, you know, strategy and implementation and review. And it reminds me that recognition, even in its simplest form, has to have a plan. It's not something you just throw out there and you hope it's going to stick against the wall and that it's going to work. You know, there are best practices, there are things that we know work successfully, and we always have to be ready to sort of, you know, course correct just a little bit. So, you know, when I see the industry today, I see what's happening in healthcare. Again, not tons of things have changed. What I see has changed perhaps technology. So there are some tools that make things a little bit easier to say thank you. You know, I've long seen that patients are a critical part of the recognition process. So allowing patients and their loved ones to give recognition to staff and clinicians, I mean, again, what could mean more to you outside of perhaps getting recognition, you know, from your boss or someone you work with, than getting recognized by the person that you cared for? And I think that's probably something we don't look at doing enough. I mean, folks get comments and surveys and, you know, people get thank you letters sometimes, but make patient recognition an active part of your recognition strategy, and then, you know, use tools like in-room technology to help that happen, you know, in a more consistent way. And it's really going to help you measure what you're doing and see if it's working.
Those are great.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, one of the things that we talk about a lot when we talk about recognition or any of the other functions that we're looking at, leadership tactics, we talk about, like you talked about, being mindful about this, being very intentful about this, understanding what you're doing and why. Like, don't just throw it out there. I'm really trying to recognize this person and help them feel appreciated, and I haven't been successful until they are. And so going back and doing that check to make sure that that's there. And I love the idea of patient comments. Who doesn't want to be told thank you for being taken care of? But one of the things that we're looking at and considering doing also as well is asking our leaders, the one-up or even two-up leaders, to even be more responsive when they see things that need to be recognized. Although they're not the direct manager, we know that recognition from 1 to 2 up makes a huge impact too. So as our leaders are doing their management rounds, they're taking notes now and writing down the things that they hear from the different employees about who has done something great, who has done something that they want to recognize, and they're sending notes. They're making a point to go back to those folks, and it makes an impact. It does make an impact too to have that skip level going on. And again, who doesn't want to know that the president of the organization knows who you are and what you've done?
Right.
That's right. I mean, I could say that over and over. That is good. And, you know, I see, you know, as we round out some of our main topics today, I do see even in our company, we have an increased presence in healthcare. We are starting to have more and more hospital systems reach out for more information, looking to find ways to, just like Melissa stated, you know, it's technology. As the technology improves and makes engagement and recognition easier in that environment, we're seeing more and more of that happen. So that's exciting for us, and I know for the whole industry. As we did hit all our topics today, but what I'd like to do before we close out is ask if there's any final words from either of you or both of you to the listener today, just in general, or anything you'd like to say to our audience.
I just want to say that this is a topic that it's challenging. It's not something that we've talked about before, that there's this magic bullet that can go in and do this. It's something that takes work. It's something that takes patience. It's something that truly does start from the top leadership. So to make sure that you're getting that support and commitment from there, and it's something that takes working this all throughout the year, that's when you're going to see some impact. And then just to pick a couple of things to really focus on. One of the things that we try to do in our engagement data is ask our leaders to look at the questions that we ask What are the questions that we ask to help determine our engagement score? And then we ask them to ask themselves, what will our employees see? What will they witness if they're able to mark strongly agree to this comment? You know, so if they say, I'm proud to tell people I work for this organization, what are they seeing? What are they witnessing every day that they can mark that strongly agree? And then do those things. Make sure that those kinds of things are happening in the workplace. And we'll go down the whole set of questions like that. So to try to really make them tangible actions that they can see and put into operation.
Great feedback.
Yeah, I would say, you know, it sort of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, you know, that thank you can't be an empty promise. You know, take your time, do your homework, be flexible, make it meaningful, right? Because thank you does mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You know, and don't underestimate the power of a thank you from a patient or their loved one. Like I said, they're there, they're a captive audience. That's why we're doing what we're doing, right? We wouldn't be working in healthcare if we didn't have patients to take care of. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity to make that connection, right? Because when you see it, and Susie will probably agree with me, when you see that, you don't even have words to describe it. It's an incredible, powerful thing that you don't forget. And I would say just remember that because most folks in healthcare do this. It's more than just a job, right? It's sort of a life commitment, and that usually means a lot to most folks. So just remember that.
Thank you both. I want to thank again my guest today, Susie Lyons, Workforce Engagement Consultant with Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and Melissa Minkow, Patient Experience Leader with TVR Communications, both of my longtime friends from RPI and just good friends in general, talking today about the state of healthcare and employee engagement. I hope you as our listener have enjoyed this conversation. Please feel free to share this webinar with any of your peers and colleagues that you think would be good to know it. We've got some contact information now up on our screen. You'll be able to reach out to me or to our team here at CA Short for more information. Thank you again, ladies. I hope everyone today has a wonderful afternoon.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Susie.
Thank you.